The Oxford English Dictionary defines change as the act or process of making or becoming different. So what is it for an organisation to become different? What's involved in acts of making or processes of becoming? We've learnt that the many stories of change provide various answers to these questions, and there's a bias towards an overly rational story. The cycle of change integrates major insights from these stories. It's an easy guiding image. If we're not careful, however, we default to the rational story, and it'll shrink to a task-focused plan, do, check cycle. To short-circuit this response, we need simple, memorable, and evocative counter-images. In this lesson, you'll be introduced to two such images as an ongoing reminder and guide. Firstly, the organisation as an iceberg. Secondly, the process as a roller coaster ride. So firstly, the iceberg. The formal view of organisations is they are systems and structures, processes and procedures, and rules and responsibilities. Organisations are regarded as more or less functional systems that deliver the products and services they create. As the Nobel Prize-winning economist Richard Thaler said, people are expected to behave as rational econs, and organisations to deliver. Leaders proclaim this, clients demand it, employees expect it, consultants advise it. Yet this is only a partial view of the surface or tip of the iceberg. Below the surface, there's an informal and more personal dimension to organisations. It's a world of ambiguity and chaos, emotion and intrigue. You'll find diverse subcultures and competing political interests. Organisations give a public performance of unity and rationality, but indulge in very different activities below the surface. They're much like ducks, calm on this surface, but paddling like hell underneath. Reimagining change requires us to flip the iceberg. Instead of ignoring or denying underlying realities, we surface and focus on them. Rather than being fooled by public appearances and the rational tip of the iceberg, we learn to appreciate the informal dimension of organisational life and dedicate time, resources, and attention to it. From the 18th century, our dominant image of the acts of making, or the processes of becoming, is one of progress in two stages. It's a black and white story of moving from a bad, non-rational past to a good and rational future. This image is challenged by counter-images of change as a three-stage process. Our storytelling minds expect a three-step plot: a past state of affairs, a journey involving challenges and struggles, and a future of happy or tragic endings. Our cultural awareness of rites of passage expects a three-stage transition. As the anthropologists Van Gennep and Turner first highlighted, we expect and practice a separation from old cultural attitudes, beliefs, and roles, entrance into a liminal state of anxiety and excitement in between, and incorporation of new identities and behaviour on the other side. One popular yet partial view of the three-step process is the Valley of Death, or Death Valley image of change. Here the focus is coming to terms with loss, as in the popular Elizabeth Kubler-Ross grief cycle. This image highlights the denial and anger at the start of the change journey, and the descent into what Rosabeth Moss-Kanter describes as the difficult middles of change, the anxieties, the depression, and inability to cope, perform, and move on. An alternative, equally partial image is one of excitement, challenge, and opportunity in taking the plunge. Here the focus is on gain, opportunities and benefits for growth and development, as in Carol Dweck's popular image of the growth mindset. It admits fears, but focuses on the exhilaration and thrill of the ride. It celebrates the delight that comes from facing up to fears and transforming oneself and others. It extols the rewards of reaching a higher stage of achievement. The metaphor of the roller coaster ride combines both these images. It captures the anxiety and the excitement, the challenges of leaping into the unknown and being out of control in the Big Dipper, and highlights the many unexpected twists and turns as well as ups and downs. This image helps us to expect the fears of loss and anticipate the joys from the gains, and appreciate the temptation yet discomfort of rigidly gripping tightly onto the sides of our change carriage. This lovely excerpt from a popular novel, Along for the Ride, captures the feeling. With the help of the iceberg and roller coaster images, you're able to reimagine the cycle of change. They'll assist in preventing the knee-jerk reactions and false expectations built into the overly rational story. The lesson is not, however, that the iceberg and the roller coaster are real descriptions of organizations and change. Like all images, they're partial. The point is they can be useful as a simple and appealing reminder and guide. In reimagining change, they help us leave our reactive culture of complaint, complaining things don't happen as our rational story says they should, and move on to a constructive world of creativity and enterprise. To recap, in this lesson you've learned three things. Firstly, images of change are based on views of the organization and the process of change. Secondly, the iceberg and the roller coaster provide useful and appealing images. And finally, these images are to be used creatively as a reminder and a guide to avoid slipping back into an overly rational view of change.